Welcome, Iowans for Freedom. We have a special guest for a moment, Representative Steve Holden. He's going to talk about the exciting day that we had at the Capitol yesterday. And thank you for joining us, Representative Holt.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, what an exciting day yesterday for House Republicans and for Iowans.
Yesterday was one of those rare days where number one, you know you made a difference, where you know that you're accomplishing what you came here to do. It was an epic day in which we sort of in a number of bills we torched liberal stupidity. I mean, there's just no doubt about it, and that's exactly what this was about. The bill that I ran uh, will prohibit the gender reassignment surgeries and hormone therapies for our minors, for our young children under 18 years of age. The efficacy for these procedures is not there. The longitudinal studies, the few that are out there, point to the reality that those who are not allowed to go through puberty and who go through these procedures are anywhere from 7 to 20 times more likely to commit suicide. Whereas when they're allowed to go through puberty, which the puberty blockers prevent, but when these young people that are experiencing gender dysphoria, when they're allowed to go through puberty, they are 80 to 95% of them will return to the gender identity of their biology if they're allowed to go through puberty. That is the best outcome. So the procedures in many ways don't make sense. So it's headed to the governor's desk and it will prohibit those procedures in Iowa. Um, there's probably no doubt that that will be subjected to a number of legal challenges. So we'll have to work through that without a doubt. But anyway, we stood up to protect our children in that regard. And there were also a number of education bills. If you'd like me to talk about those as well, Oliver, I can do
Yeah,
that.
I want to ask you a question about HF 623. So it was substituted for SF 538. What was they're the same verbiage, correct?
Yeah, when bills I worked in lockstep with the Senate. The language was identical, and the reason we do that so that whichever chamber passes it first and sends it to the other chamber, we can just substitute, so we don't have to go all the way through the committee process with a bill that's identical in nature. So when they're identical in nature like that, we're able to just substitute the other chamber's version and streamlines things. So it's exactly what our bill was exactly, and every word, every detail, every period.
Fantastic. And I think there was some concern briefly as to whether the bill was going to pass, but it passed what, 58 to 39?
Actually, it ended up being 57 because there was one representative that I guess decided they voted wrong, so they went and changed their vote to no. Um, but it was 57, which, yes, that was a pretty decisive victory. That means we lost, what, seven Republicans. But the fact of the matter is, we were concerned earlier in the morning. It is an emotional issue, and a lot of people are concerned, hearing from a lot of folks. But in the end, when we actually put it up on the board, you can see that the number was 57. So it was a decisive victory.
I've heard a lot of feedback from legislators about the massive amounts of emails they got from Iowans supporting the bill.
Yep. Yep. They got a lot of emails from Iowa supporting the bill. Obviously, we also got a lot of emails from the other side, but it's an emotional issue and it's an issue that, a lot of folks are just not comfortable dealing with. Nobody wants to have to do these kinds of pieces of
Right.
legislation. Very uncomfortable. I hate to have to do it. You get accused of how many times it was said on the floor yesterday that we're going to cause kids to commit suicide with this legislation. That's what the Democrats were saying. I fundamentally disagree. There's so many issues. It's so complex when we're talking about so many issues that go into the suicidal ideations and those feelings in these young people that have a myriad of emotional issues going on. And I think it's very clear that providing these drugs in the long run makes that worse. But
Yes,
it
for
was a
sure.
difficult issue that a lot of folks had to grapple with.
We could do hours on that.
Yeah.
255 by Stone, that was the teacher's licensure.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great bill. It just streamlines the teacher licensure process because again, we've got, we want to get as many good teachers into Iowa as we can. So we're looking at a lot of different ways that we can streamline the process or license people that are eminently qualified, but that came from other careers such as the military, things of that kind. So we've done a lot of things like that in the last few years.
And then we had the HF 348, which was the classroom instruction bill from
Yep,
Wheeler.
yep. Yep, torching liberal stupidity. So again, we're not going to allow in Iowa second graders to be told that they can be a boy, a girl, both, neither, or something else. So this, in Florida, I think they went K through 3. We went K through 6. I would like to have gone higher than that, but that's where we landed in conversations with the Senate and a lot of other folks. And so what we're saying is K through 6th grade, you will not have discussions about gender identity and all of these sorts of things and confuse these children. I think it's very clear to me, at least, that we're having more and more of these issues because kids are being told at such early ages that they can choose their gender, and it's just causing a lot of confusion and I think a lot of mental illness in our children. So that is why we took a stand and said you're not going to have these discussions K through 6. I believe the only time those discussions really should be had are with parents, frankly, regardless of age. And I think we need to redefine sex ed as reproductive education, like it used to be when I was in school, where we talked about what happens between a male and a female that produces babies. I don't think there's any room in that discussion for you can choose to be a boy, a girl, both, neither, or something else. And so that is, this battle I think is far from over. We still have a lot of things left to do, but we certainly made a lot of advances yesterday.
For sure, and I would agree with all those statements. Representative Bowden had 2 bills,
Yep.
HF430, reports and investigations.
Reports and investigations. Now, I'm not sure. There must
I
be more
think
to
it
that
had
one.
something to do with procedures.
Oh, it's Board of Educational Examiners. Yeah.
Right.
The Board of Educational Examiners bill reforms the Board of Educational Examiners because what we found was they're not holding teachers accountable. They circle the wagons and find excuses not to hold teachers accountable, not just in some of these social issue areas, but teachers that were found to be grooming students were given 18 months suspended license and allowed to go back in the classroom when they should never have been in the classroom again. So we reformed the Board of Educational Examiners to put an equal number of parents with educators on that board. Made a number of other changes too that we hope result in more accountability and more voice for parents and families in the state of Iowa.
Exactly. And I know HF597, age appropriate materials or
Yeah.
age appropriate standards, was a big deal this session
Yes,
too.
that was huge, and it's a very complex issue because of some of the Supreme Court rulings and the free speech issue. Very difficult issue, and when you get to a point where you have a segment of our society supporting pornography and obscene material in schools under the concept of it's free speech, you have a difficult situation, and we've got to a point where free speech is defined by allowing children to be subjected to extremely pornographic and obscene materials in school. It has no place for it. And as we said over and over again, they just keep staying on this false narrative, which is an absolute lie, which is that we're trying to ban books and burn books. Not true. We're just trying to establish what is age appropriate in schools, just like we do for movies. We're not banning movies when we have R ratings and NC-17 and PG-13 ratings on films. We're saying as a society, we've established that you have to be at least 17 or have parental consent before you can go into certain movies. Same thing we're trying to do with books, although some of them clearly don't belong in a school library at all. Public library is a different story. So this, sort of tried to tweak the language in terms of these graphic images and pornographic obscene passages in a way that we hope will stand up to legal constitutional muster, but will also give schools more guidance, definitively say, get some of these books out of the schools. They don't belong there. And not just in libraries, but in school classrooms as well. So we'll see how that goes. Again, I don't think that fight is over by any means either.
Well, we'll just keep fighting on that front.
Yeah.
So for these bills, are they on the way to the governor's desks or are
So
there any that still need to pass through the Senate?
yeah, so I think all of the education bills you just described have to head to the Senate. Those were House files. The Senate is working more off of the governor's education bill. We were working more off of our own individual bills based upon the things that we've been hearing. Not that the governor's bill didn't have a lot of good stuff in it, but that's kind of the way the education chair chose to go. So we're going to have to come together with the Senate and figure out how we're going to proceed as far as all of these individual bills. But I think they will get done. Ultimately, I think they'll get done. On the issue of the gender procedure, the gender reassignment surgeries and hormone therapies, that bill again was in lockstep with the Senate. The Senate had already passed it, so that one is on the way to the governor's desk for signature.
I couldn't have been more happy about that. I mean, I
Yeah.
really felt like last night, if we were going to have a big giant party for celebration, last night would have been a good one.
Yeah. Well, I have to say the number of legislators that have been fighting these battles for several years. We all went out to dinner last night, went to a Japanese steakhouse, and just enjoyed one another and enjoyed the fact that we felt like we had really, all of these bills, if you look at them, every single one of them was about protecting our children. Every single one of them was about protecting the innocence of our children and standing up for our children against, again, I keep saying it because I think that's what it is. It is liberal stupidity, and it is destroying or really damaging our culture and our country. And Republicans in the House unabashedly stood up yesterday and said we've had enough. And there's more to come. I mean, I've also got a bill that's going to dictate our K through 12 schools. If you're biologically female, you have to use female restrooms. If you're biologically male, you have to use male restrooms. That is coming as well. And so we are trying to respond. We're not the ones that move the goalposts. It's amazing that the other side calls us extreme and hateful, but we're not the ones that suddenly decided that male bathrooms weren't for males, just for males, and female bathrooms weren't just for females. And yesterday, I think it was International Women's Day, and I think the Biden administration recognized a biological male for International Women's Day. At least that's what I was reading quickly in a blurb on my social media. So I'm like, stop the insanity. I mean, this is ridiculous. A female is a female and a male is a male. As Genesis 1:27 tells us, God made man and God made woman, end of discussion. And so we have to stand up to this garbage, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. I mean, there's been back to basics thrown around a lot in education. I kind of want to say back to common sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Back to we wonder why our scores, our academic scores are increasingly going downhill. Why would they not be? When teachers tell us they're having to spend more and more time on social emotional learning and telling kids that they can be a boy or girl, both neither something else, instead of sticking to reading, writing, and arithmetic. So we've got to get back to basics.
For sure. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate
Sure.
you finding a quiet corner there at the Capitol
Yeah.
and jumping on with us to kind of give us an update because yesterday was really, really important and impactful. And I also want to thank Iowans for Freedom and all the other folks that responded to our call to action. We
Yeah,
had
let me say
a
that
great
that makes a
response.
huge difference. Please let me say that that makes a huge difference when folks do that. Thank you so much to all of you that responded in that way. That is so helpful. And yeah, yesterday in my 10 years was one of the most historic days we've had. So it was great to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Representative Holt. Thanks for fighting for our freedoms and fighting for our kids. And we look forward to seeing what else is coming down the pipeline. So,
Same to you, sir. Have a
yeah,
great day.
you have a blessed day. And
Thank
thank you,
you.
everyone else.